We are here, everybody. It's so wonderful to have you, you beautiful souls. I'm just grateful that you are joining us. Happy August 1st. Do you feel the energy? There's been a lot of strange energy going on. And of course, Lorelei is going to tell us all about what it is that we may be feeling right now. And we also have Shivani, of course, joining us. Hi, ladies. You look beautiful today. Well, I'm really excited here because, we're doing the 4 agreements. And today we're on the 3rd agreement. And the 3rd agreement is don't make assumptions. And of course, the other 2 are be impeccable with your word and don't take anything personally. But I believe that if we can learn to not make assumptions, it will save our relationships, especially those love relationships, because we tend to do that, especially with the people that we're closest to. So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we get into the 3rd agreement, Lorelei, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody the cosmic weather, what's going on for us right now?
There is no cosmic weather. No. Well, I mean, if I'm any barometer here, am I? Okay. Again, I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Like, in other words, I know what the weather is astrologically, and then do I make myself feel that way, or do I feel something and then I look at the weather? And so I often have that conversation with myself. So just wanted to share that with everyone because, we have half of the zodiac now, half of the planets in retrograde, and retrograde means inside. It's reflective and contemplative. And so so for me, what I was feeling today was like, where is my mojo? Like, where is my usual, like make it happen, excitement? And then I thought, well, has your get up and go gone up and went? and that's sort of what I was feeling because, I talk about this stuff. And so now I felt today, for me, it was very much one of those days where I didn't want to do anything. And then I felt guilty that I didn't want to do anything, right? And I was thinking, well, I imagine other people could certainly feel this way because we're such a culture of we got to be productive, we got to make things happen. And this is a time when the happening could feel more internal because we have an opportunity to look at what, again, is driving the boat or the ship or the car anyway. So there's no question that this is a time that can be very rich, but it really, I think, necessitates a whole different orientation because it's like a time to tie up loose ends rather than necessarily make a lot of headway moving forward. It's a time to organize. It's a time to plan. And I'll tell you both, and all of you, one of the things that I do every time Mercury's retrograde, I haven't done it yet, and I know it's going to clear up some of this energy that I'm having, is my filing. The filing, because who does our filing unless we have a staff? Well, the beauty of that is and I'm going to do that tomorrow, is you find things that you might have lost. I mean, most of us have either a drawer or a cabinet or, a pile or whatever, where you put the stuff that you go, okay, I'll deal with that later. Well, that's the stuff to deal with now, because that's where some of the information lies, where we need to be focused. So I noticed my own filing, but yet I also know that in that is, as I said, there's richness there. So my point here is to just say to everyone, if you feel like, you're not maybe making as much headway or moving forward, really give yourself a break, because what we can rediscover, there's another word, when we have this much retrograde, is can be incredibly valuable, where you go, oh my gosh, I hadn't looked at that in a while. And then in that is the renewed inspiration, the renewed motivation. But certainly, I'm not saying they're not people that don't feel like they can take the world by storm now, but I would imagine most people are kind of feeling like it could feel like things moving much slower than they might like, lead boots in molasses kind of thing. And so again, for me, I just kind of surrendered into it, and I figured, oh, good, Suits is on tonight, so I can watch Suits.
I have felt that way today too. And your mojo and my mojo went out shopping, just so you know.
My mojo is still there.
Yeah, she's doing great. She's down under, so it's a little different energy. But I am, I'm very.
Well, on the 2nd of August, maybe that's why.
Oh, right. That's right. Yeah, and this is Swiss Independence Day. I lived in Switzerland in the 60s and went to boarding school. And 1. August, this is the independence of the country of Switzerland today. So this is their July.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Well, today I have felt that drag, like I'm trying to swim through quicksand, and I couldn't get out for a walk. I couldn't clear my head. I've still got this sinusy stuff going on. And so I just took it easy. This for us, for Ferris and me, we just finally said, we got to reformat the computer. Not something I would like to normally do in a retrograde. And then I thought,
no, that's a great retrograde.
Reformat.
That's actually, exactly. Yeah. That's a great, even though that could appear like, oh my God, we got to spend time reformatting the computer. That is a perfect retrograde.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it really is, because in that process, again, there's going to be some sort of rediscovery that, again, when we do those kinds of things, we're telling ourselves, well, that's not productive. We got to be doing whatever. But no, a reformatting of a computer is actually a good retrograde.
Oh, that's good to know, because it's so work intensive. There's so many things, so many files, and that you've got to go through and everything. It's a lot. And we've been putting Band-Aid on the issue because I haven't been able to get my email. I haven't, a lot of stuff keeps going wonky. So anyways, that's what we're doing. And it's going to be awesome once we get through it. So that might be part of it. Now, I didn't send this to you, Shivani, but do you have anything that anybody's written to you or anything? There was only one, which is Nalia. She wrote back and told us how to pronounce her name. And I think we said Nalia or something like that, but it's Nalia. Nalia is how she pronounces it. And what she said, and I don't have the exact words in front of me, but she said, thank you for reading my comments last week. I know that they were political. I know that a lot of people don't want to hear about that right now. And yet while you didn't read it completely, you still brought it up. And that is more courage than she's used to seeing with people today. People are hiding how they feel right now and not speaking out because of everything's going on. And she said, I really appreciate that not only have you brought it up and then you take it to that higher plane, to the soul view. And so she said, thank you so very much, that she just honors what we're doing. And excuse me. And she wants us to make it into a podcast. She said, please, please, please make this into a podcast. So we got to get that going as soon as I start feeling a little better.
And we're saying hello to Mariska from South Africa.
Oh, hi, Mariska.
Yeah.
What was that, Lorelei?
No, I was going to say, after the retrogrades would be the time to then be moving forward on a podcast.
Yeah.
Anything new.
Right. And we're looking at that. We're learning right now.
Exactly.
So we're just taking the time to absorb the information so that we can move forward later. Because there's a lot to it. It's, it's more work intensive than I would have thought initially. And then once you get going, it's not so bad. But anyways, anything else, Shivani? Any other comments or anything?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
You guys are very quiet.
Okay. And there may be some out there. It's just that I'm reformatting my computer, so I haven't probably gotten a lot of those messages. So I apologize. Please write them again. Go ahead, say hi to each other in the chat over on the side. If you're on Facebook, put the chat. And yes, I did start the Facebook a few minutes late. For some reason, the button didn't push when I told it to start. So go ahead and put your comments in below. And if you are on YouTube, then of course, we love to hear from you. Please put in your comments as well. And if you love what we're doing, follow our channel and like our video. You know, as I said before, you know, this third agreement, this is the one that when I started asking my husband questions based on his personality temperament, because I teach type and temperament. So I looked at him. I'm very peacock. I'm out there. I speak in order to think, and he has to think in order to speak. And I assumed he was slower than me. I assumed that he didn't, that it took him longer to figure out all the details. Where, you know, for me, I see things whole when they come out. And I think probably both of you do that, where you just see everything out in front of you and all the details are right there for you. If not, you just make it up and you keep on going because it's forward momentum, where he's always, wait a minute, back up, stop. And, you know, let's think about this. He's living in the past and I'm present in the future. So we used to have some really difficult times in our relationship. And because I was assuming that he was just trying to be difficult, that he was just trying to act out against me, to be different than me. Well, he is different than me, you know? And how many of us have done this?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I had to laugh, you know, because I had the perfect example about how I was assuming something. And it was funny. In the end, it was funny, but it wasn't funny when it happened. So there's a shop 10 minutes down the road. Like, I'm in the country, right? It's very rural. So it's this tiny township. And there may be the pub and the convenience store, and then there are like 3 or 4 different shops. And one shop is a organic shop, you know, come cafe, very much, you know, trying to be holistic. Okay, and they have amazing cauliflower pies, and you know, like I do. And raw cakes, and you know, so I do support them. And the owner is, you know, hippy dippy in his 30s. Okay, like it's a really different world out there. And so 3 times I intentionally went to buy something. 3 times they were not open, but they were supposed to be open. And the 3rd time I got quite annoyed, right? And was like, why do I drive for, say, 20, 25 minutes and they're supposed to be open? And to the point, you know, he said, come on a Sunday, I will have the cauliflower pies, you can even buy them frozen. I'm going, yes. And rock up, lunchtime, really hungry, shut. and so I have this traveler and friend here, and I thought, and she's very interested, I said, look, I have no idea whether this is open, but let's try. And so they were open. Okay. So I started off well, I thought, because I'm starting with questioning. So, okay, so when are your opening hours? and they say, well, from 8 to 4. And I'm going, well, but 3 times now, you know, I came within these hours and you guys were closed. Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes if there's not enough, customers, we close early. And anyway, and I'm telling, well, but I'm your customer, and 3 times I'm making a trip. Anyway, it escalated very quickly. He could not see my view, and I assumed that he would have had some customer training. At least all I needed to be was to be acknowledged, right? And in the end, it was like, we just want peace and I don't mind if I lose you. You can just leave the shop. I don't care about losing a customer. I was like, what?
Wow.
And totally different. You know, I assume that if you have a shop front, that if you say that you're open, that you're open. And yes, I agree. It sucks if you if nobody comes and you stay 2 more hours. And then I said, well, you just have to ring to see whether they open. It's,
I've been reading this book, Louise Penny's the Gamache series, and I've gone through it before. She's got a couple of new books, but anyways, there's this village of Three Pines, and for those of you who know Three Pines, there's this little bistro there, and hotel, whatever, for people to stay. And they don't want anybody to stay there. So, they don't advertise. They don't let anybody even know. And when you're saying this, it just reminds me of this little village where they're like, we just want peace. We just want to have fun. We just want to,
and I even tried to say,
here, that's okay.
I'm also I'm saying this because you will lose customers, but I had an assumption that my view, I think most people have the assumption that if you have a shop front and you say, because I looked later, the easiest way would have been to say, okay, we're open from 8 till 2, so everybody knows. And if they get more business, well, then that's fine. Open 2 hours more, and nobody gets upset that people actually, want to buy something and they're closed.
And I think the hardest thing for us, it goes back to last week's agreement, which is don't take things personally, because we make assumptions and then we take it personally. And then what comes out of our mouth may not be.
Then we're not impeccable with our word.
Yeah.
It's like dominoes.
Yeah. In
the end, I walked away. Well, actually, what I should say, it started off with a shop assistant, right? And I actually thought, and we ordered something, and, for me it was, okay, it's done. And suddenly the owner was in the back, must have heard everything. And he came out with guns blazing. What's the problem? Like,
yeah,
that's when it deteriorated. And then I just said, look, I think you have no understanding of customer service. And I just left. It's like,
well, it's almost like you could say, I made an assumption that you knew how to run a
exactly, and I made an assumption that how I see business, they would see business, and then I was accused to put negativity and bad vibes, and they just want peace, and it was like, okay. And I think they couldn't, because my friend was with me, and she said they simply couldn't handle, they saw it as criticism, or in a way it was, but they couldn't handle that somehow. And and then he said, well, I'm the owner and I can open whenever I want to. I'm saying, yes, you can.
That's true.
And that's true. And that's, we don't know the reason. This is where assumptions come in. Maybe his peace at this time in his life is more important than customers. Right. We just don't know what somebody's going through. We've said this before with everything going on in the world. Some people believe in climate change and other people don't. We make assumptions that they're not reading the research. They have their own reasons for wanting to believe what they believe, whatever that happens to be, regardless of the facts that are out there. People have their own reasons for doing things, just as I said before, in our relationships. And this is something, Lorelei, we've talked about this many times about relationships. Of course, you've been married multiple
number of times.
And do you think that assumptions had anything to do with that?
Oh, absolutely. I assumed they were going to make me happy. Certainly.
Yeah.
But, I'm thinking in rereading this again, and I was Googling, that agreement and reading what some psychologists were saying and things. And I thought, how I'm going to use this now for myself? I'm going to own it when I do that. In other words, I'm going to call myself on it in my relationships. I'm going to say, and the first time I do it, I'll text you guys or Skype you guys. Seriously, I'm going to say, because it's very empowering to be able to say, you know what? I made an assumption about this situation or how you were going to feel or what you were thinking, or and based on the assumption that I made, I altered my behavior, because that's what we do. So to be, this is the beauty of the fact that we're revisiting these under the retrogrades, really, because this information can sink in at a deeper level. So to be able to say to somebody, you know what? Because when if we make an assumption, it's because we are taking it personally on some level. I'm assuming this about what's going on because I'm putting it through my own personal filter. So I'm going to be really curious to see, and I would suggest everybody try this on if it resonates, what I'm going to do with this from here on out. In other words, around, wow, I made an assumption. Let me cop to it. Let me call myself on it, because that is certainly going to clear the way in any relationship. It's a door opener, really. I mean, to say, gee, I made an assumption, I apologize. I did that. I made an assumption based on, and so am I correct? Is the assumption that I made correct or not? And so what courage would that take, right? So I'm in other words, I'm challenging myself that's the behavior that I'm going to take from this, that we're having this conversation in a retrograde, because I've never said that before to anybody. Have you, either of you, ever said, gee, I made an assumption about such and such? Have we ever?
I have, because when I went through this a few years ago, Gary and I started talking about this and working on these things. See, a truth about human nature. If somebody doesn't speak up, the other person gets to make up whatever they want about them, and they will. And that's what we do, and that's where assumptions come from.
Yep.
Somebody is quiet, therefore we fill in the blanks for them.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what the truth is. That's where the worst, to me, the hardest assumptions are. And my husband is extremely quiet. And so I was filling in the blanks for him all the time. And some were true. Most of them were not. Oops, there goes my dad trying to call.
Yeah.
He always
think also
the show.
Even like what I noticed too, even the assumption, although we are, say, both speaking English and we're using the same words, that I'm assuming that a particular word means to the other person exactly what I understand the word to mean. And that isn't necessarily the case either.
Yeah.
So quite often when it's important for me to relate, I'm actually asking the question, what did you hear me say? Just to know that we are on the same page.
Gee, I had a husband, my last husband did that, and that I took that as control. No, I mean, I really appreciate that you just said that. I just got to revisit. He would say, can you tell me what I just said? And I'd freeze like a child. So thank you for that. There was just a healing there, guys. Just had to acknowledge that. Really? Can you tell me what I just said? Wow.
Yeah, because I think that's already the basis. Yeah. So say if what the word, say, freedom means to you might be totally different to me.
Yeah. Or
how love is expressed might be different. Yeah, we have all these assumptions. We believe that the other person is similar to us, but we all live in our own reality.
So if we make assumptions because we're afraid to ask questions, right? So why are we afraid to ask questions? What's at the bottom of that? Like what? So like, why are we afraid to say, gee, I thought this? I mean, is it because we have to be more vulnerable? I mean, I'm asking the question. I'm not saying I know the answer. You know?
The reason for that, Lorelei and Shivani and everybody, that I have found, it's much easier to ask the questions or make a statement before you start a conversation. So you're setting up the ground rules. So whoever mentions it first has the power in a relationship. That's just communication 101. And, whoever starts that conversation has the power. So if you ask a question, start a conversation, ask the question up front, it's much easier to ask that question up front than it is later on. So the sooner you can get that question out, the more empowered you'll be.
Yes.
And then the other questions come easier after that. An example of that. I assumed I was getting a massage, and they said that they did the kind of massage that I need as an athlete. And so I assumed they would do my IT bands, which get really tight and deep the way that I like it to be, without telling them upfront or asking them, how deep do you go, or do you do this area? And she didn't end up doing it. And I ended up having to literally book another appointment the next day. And I said, Cindy, that was on you, because you didn't ask the right questions. You assumed that she was going to be just like your favorite person that you go to. I've got 2 people that I dearly love that do a great job. She's not bad. She's just different than what I'm used to. And if I wanted something specific, instead of assuming that's what was going to happen and then be disappointed, I could have asked that question up front and empowered myself. But once I was on the table, then it's hard to ask when you're right in the middle of something. It's hard to stop the conversation and ask that question, unless you're an owl personality that asks a lot of questions anyway.
See, and the beauty of this conversation is we can rewire, again, a reword, how we do this. So as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, I could see myself in the future saying up front in some situation, let me ask you this question, ... because I don't want to assume whatever. In other words, which would be very empowering. So my point being, we're hearing this differently. We can hear this in a way where we can absorb it differently now. And anyone that's watching this under the retrograde, it's like, because this is something we do so naturally and don't necessarily say, gee, let me make sure I understand, or let me ask you this question. I mean, I can see myself even making a serious joke out of it by saying, I might be assuming something here, so let me ask you this question so I don't assume, which again would be a way to rewire that communication strategy, if you will, which is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about communication strategies.
And for people that assume certain things about me, I have learned to just make statements up front when they meet me. Because people will, they see you on the air. They see you in, for years I did commercials and movies and all this stuff. So people had assumptions. My point is this. When Gary first saw me, I was doing Ford commercials still. And I did Ford commercials for like 12 years for Ford. And he would see me on television and go, how does somebody meet somebody like that? I guess I have to go to California. He thought I lived in California. He also thought, she's going to be too uppity. She's going to be, she's probably a gold digger. She's probably, and so he was assuming all these things just by seeing me. And yet there was something down to earth about me that he liked. And then he found out I lived here in Nashville, right where he lives. And he was like, I just assumed that you were somewhere else. And it took us a few years for him to start telling me all the assumptions he made about me because I was on television.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it did come between us because he didn't tell me.
I never heard that story. And this is fascinating that you're retelling the story. I never knew how that all happened. That's very cool.
Yeah.
And very true. Again, the whole assuming thing, it's almost like we assume because it needs to fit our picture.
Yeah.
The frame that we have, the picture that we have somehow, which makes it, I'm just going on an instinct here because that helps us feel secure. If you fit my tableau, my picture, my assumption, I can feel safe in that. I can feel secure in that in some way instead of other than questioning. But as I said, from here on out, that's the communication strategy that I want to implement and see how that feels. Because I can see what you're saying, Cindy. I can feel how empowering it would be to say to someone on the front end of something, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship or whatever, or a massage, let me ask you a question here so I don't necessarily assume. I mean, that could be a wonderful rewiring and a whole new, a pattern interruptus.
Yeah. And, I've started with that because I am now looking actively for puppy classes for my new puppy that is yet to come. And it was actually really interesting. So I rang 4 different people and then I started asking them questions and they're all different. Totally like you would think, well, I've done it once before, but puppy classes, of course, they play with each other and yes, we learn some commands and no, when I started asking, no, one person said, no, I'm the only trainer that they are not off lead. They have to be on lead. And that is my reason. It was fascinating when I started asking, okay, so what's your philosophy in training? So not assuming anything. Otherwise I would have thought, puppy class was fun. Will be exactly the same like last time. Well, no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing when you think about all the situations in which we assume, I mean, it's sort of like across the board, whether it's something little, or something, more serious and more important. So I think just the fact that we're having this kind of conversation at a time when things are retrograde, especially Mercury in this case, there can be some real shifts, and what's a miracle? Of course, according to A Course in Miracles, a miracle is a shift in perception.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to perceive this whole thing differently, that's what's happening for me as we're having this conversation. So I think, I'm loving this.
See, this is something that I had to work on for many, many years because I couldn't speak up for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I became a communication expert. That's why I started teaching it as a speaker, because you've heard before that, people teach what they need to learn the most.
Totally.
That's what I needed to learn because I had a hard time speaking up, asking questions, and I made lots of assumptions, which really caused a lot of issues in relationships. Not only relationship, but in businesses, how I thought people should be doing things. I thought everybody was just like me. We talked about this ahead of time. I thought everybody was a Pisces. And that spiritual, what do you mean your spiritual growth isn't the number one most important thing for you? Money is? Really? Money over your spiritual growth? Tell me it ain't so, and we just make that assumption. Everybody is motivated by something different. And it's through asking questions that lessens. It won't get rid of assumptions completely because they happen. The next time somebody cuts you off in traffic, you probably will assume they were trying to do it intentionally. They didn't even turn and look at me. They didn't care. We don't know that. We make assumptions all day long. And I assume it's going to happen again to all of us. But where we can is to educate ourselves in not even educate, really awareness is the right word for it. Become aware of when we do that and then empower ourselves by speaking up first, owning our own truth and letting people know whatever that is right up front. And we're going to find that the assumptions go by the wayside. It doesn't.
I think the most important thing also is to slow down.
Yeah.
I think because we're so busy, part of it is I think we're just busy. And so by not being, as you said, awareness, being present means also slowing down and then I had to learn that too. I'm now genuinely curious about the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you tick? How do you think? I know you're not like me, but and I love the difference.
I just bought Curious George.
Oh.
And a little stuffed animal. And I bought it for my grandson, who is a know-it-all personality. He comes by it honestly. It runs through my family. It's a very strong, powerful gene. I've worked on it for years. But I decided that I needed one for me too. just as a reminder to always be curious, always ask questions. You know,
And interesting you would use the word curious, because that's a Mercury word.
Is it really?
Yeah, to be curious about something, absolutely. It's Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So yeah, to be curious is a wonderful way to create commonality in relationship. Absolutely. And as I said, just the fact that we're having this conversation, for me, it's like I'm excited about trying out this new strategy, really, for myself, to actually, on the front end, I mean, I'm an interviewer too, so I know how to do that, but still on the front end, to be curious and to actually really watch my assumption, you know, on the front end, and go, wait a minute, you didn't even ask a question here, Lorelei. I mean, again, the fact that we're having the conversation under the retrograde means we can put in some new habits here with this, as opposed to just, oh, that was a nice conversation and we reviewed the 4 agreements, but really to you know, rework and rewire a communication strategy here, as I said before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really love that. It's so important. This is one of the ways that we can empower ourselves so much in our lives. And it's okay to make an assumption and then correct and say, you know what? I just assumed this. And so I want to back up and ask you, okay, so what's going on? You know what? So you can back up the conversation, do a rewind, and just tell them. And you know what? Whenever I do that, you know what the other person says? I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Every time that I've ever done that, they'll say, you know what? I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, that could be anything when, you know, someone doesn't respond to us, right? To respond, whether it's, again, somebody close or a business person, we assume maybe that they're annoyed with us or mad at us, and it might have absolutely, and often doesn't, have nothing to do with us. Mm-hmm. It's something going on in them. So I would like to be able to say to someone, you know, when you didn't call me back or you didn't respond, I assumed you were angry with me. Is that true? That would be a way to ask a question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly right. And so many times it's something else. You know, I've had people assuming that I was ignoring their emails when I wasn't getting their emails. Mm-hmm. Ferris went in online and he was able to find this backlog of emails that would not go to my computer because of all the issues I was having. So, you know, we don't know what somebody's going through. Mm-hmm. We don't know what experiences they're having.
Because we're too busy taking it personally.
Right. And that's it. And that's it. And then we are no longer impeccable in our word, because then we are reacting instead of responding.
Right.
You know, we don't have that breath.
Right.
That we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And taking it personally is usually the inner child within us that's still
totally
in pain. Because that's the child. It must be my fault. That's the default mechanism we have, all of us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to hear your comments, everybody. Go ahead.
We just got a big one.
Okay. And I'm going to check on Facebook while you read that, Shabani.
Okay, so we have Vicky. Hi, everyone. How about big life assumptions, as in when you don't have a close, loving relationship with a child, in brackets as a grown-up, for instance? Those natural assumptions can knock you clear off your feet and cause great stumbling in the healing process, because you keep assuming they won't betray you, estrange you. Any of those things where you can't fathom your adult child doesn't want that relationship that you once lived for. I'm okay now, but I remember assumptions was such a kicker, and also with others too, assuming that I must have done something bad to cause it. Sending you all love. Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I truly get that. I'm just looking over here on Facebook.
And it's even, you know, it goes, like, I remember years and years back, I used to teach yoga for women with their newborn babies. So the babies were part of the class when they were 6 weeks old, right? Mm-hmm. And I taught it more as a support group as well. So these women opened up And for example, the whole assumption that is so not prevalent, what's the word?
Prevalent.
Thank you. Is that as soon as you're pregnant and you give birth, you're just this divine earth mother and you're immediately connecting to the baby.
Yeah.
Total BS.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when there's so much.
Yeah, there's a life assumption.
About so many assumptions about motherhood and how it's supposed to look. And when these women, I still remember because I felt so honored that bit by bit, these women were really honest. And they would actually say, I just wanted to throw the baby against the wall. I mean, that is, yeah, and it's something that most people go through, but they would never normally dare say that because that's not, how a mother should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we are assuming there's something totally wrong with us because we have these feelings.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we think that we're going to get married and be happy every single day until we're not, that we're going to become a mother and we're going to be happy about it every single day, or get our new animals and that we're going to be happy about it every single day, every moment of the day.
Yeah, no, I'm scared already.
Yeah.
Speaking of animals.
and look what I was assuming just before the call. I started making up all kinds of stuff because each time that I think I'm going to be getting my puppy, she pushes it a week. Mm-hmm. I could assume that this puppy is just not ready to leave the mom, or I can start inventing all this stuff. She doesn't want me to have the puppy. Maybe there's something wrong with the puppy and she's afraid to tell me. And all of these fears are coming to me because of silence. One of the things that we get in trouble with, and where most of the assumptions, I've said this before, come from, is through silence. Because when somebody is silent, the other person will make up whatever they want about what's going on. It's what happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I did have a hit on your puppy about am I not? Oh yeah, here I am.
Yeah.
She's a Gemini, right? May 22nd?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Mercury's her planet, which is retrograde. So it may be that she needs to be where she is for the retrograde. And then, so maybe what appears to be pushing back is really in the best. I don't know. Again, she's a Gemini. Her planet's in retrograde. So maybe she's supposed to be where she is with her mother during the retrograde. And then when the retrograde is over, she's ready for her new adventure with you.
Yeah.
So that was something.
Yeah. And I will, I've been asking pretty direct questions to the lady and working very hard not to make assumptions. And it's hard. It's hard when you get limited answers. It's really hard.
Can you get on a call with her? You can actually call her.
It goes to a voicemail thing.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of puppies out there. Well, I'm going to look here. Let me see, Richard. I have a comment. I'm not able to get it on my iPad very well here. Can somebody get on there and get it? I'm only seeing half the conversation from Richard.
On Facebook?
Yes, on our Facebook page. And right now I'm seeing when my mother was in the latter part of her life, I assumed that I didn't engage with her much. And then it went away. So I'm not able to get it for some reason. The whole
I'm onto it. Hang on.
Okay. All right. And Kathy is watching. I just want to say hi, Kathy and Nancy and Michael and Cindy.
Okay, I've got it. Okay, let's switch it. When my mother was in the latter part of her life, I assumed that if I didn't engage with her much during that time, it wouldn't affect me so much after she would pass from this world. She was living in a house which she had purchased in the same city in which I was living. She had moved back from another city so that she could be much closer to a sister of mine and me. We both were living in the same city. My mother followed a friend's advice to take out mortgages on her house. One of them was to fix the house up, making it much more energy efficient, But 2008 came and she went underwater with her mortgage. She couldn't keep up with her payments and pay for her medical needs. So sorry to hear that. She followed advice from other friends and walked away from the house, discontinuing any more payments. She had always done well in her property purchases previously. After she moved out of town, I didn't engage with her much. I was able to visit her 8 days before she died. I knew that it was my last chance to do so. When the sister that was living in the same city where I live had a memorial service for my mother, I was so sick that I couldn't attend. I was sick for a month afterwards. I still love her deeply. And so what did you assume, Richard?
Yeah, I'm looking at it too.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't get it to come up here. I can only see part of the...
He said he assumed that if he didn't engage with her much during the time she was ill, it wouldn't affect him as much when she passed.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
assuming.
Yeah.
And it obviously did affect him very
And
much.
it's the opposite happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really would love to know from everyone, what assumptions in your life have you had that led to a more difficult situation? And just go ahead and put it in the chat, either on the side below, or, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and put those comments in there as well.
Well, I mean, I said it before and it was joking, but it really wasn't joking. I mean, most of the times I got married, I really assumed that it was his job to make me happy. I did, and I'm sure there are many folks who feel that way. And then all of a sudden they're in relationship and they're not happy and they think it's the other person's fault and it has nothing to do with the other person, because that lack of happiness existed here before that other person came along. But I did assume that. And I would imagine if we didn't assume that in relationships, we'd have a lot healthier exchange with many people, well, and no different than in a business deal either. Assuming that other person's participation is going to whatever. So I just am excited to have, as I said, to try on this new strategy of the way to communicate it on the front end, because I can already feel how empowering that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Never having really done that. I don't even, I've never said to anybody.
Yeah, quite often we assume in a relationship what the roles should be. Well, the man should be doing the outside yard work and, the woman should be the cooking, right? And back then, my husband was the opposite. He actually sewed, he cooked, he cleaned. I mean, he was not your typical man. I mean, I was happy about it.
And Gary, he was the nurturer with Sarah when she was little. I'm actually a better nurturer now that she's older, because I have a hard time with babies. I want somebody to talk to. I want somebody to be able to talk back with me. I want a conversation. And so I love it when kids are older. Not that I don't love babies. I think they're wonderful. But Gary has this magic about him where he interacts so well with Sarah. And then when she got into her teens, she said, I feel like Gary and I don't connect like we used to, but you and I are getting along. And I said, Sarah, that's because Gary approached you from his strength, which is loving little kids, knowing how to play with them, knowing how to be feisty and fun and playful and all that stuff, where I like conversation. And now Sarah does too. And so we have a different relationship that's really developed now that she's older. And, either one of us assuming that we should be different. I'm not the nurturing mom. I'm more of a coach. How do you think this would be for you? Like, both my grandchildren will tell you, I have said from the time that they started making their own decisions, your reputation is up to you. I tell them that all the time. Your reputation. It's not up to me. You're not going to bank on my reputation. You have to create your own reputation. Your reputation, especially, when you get in your teen years, your reputation's up to you. I can tell you what to do, and I will. What I would like you to do, but it's up to you to follow them. We can't assume they're just going to do it because we said so, especially at that time.
Oh, absolutely.
That's for sure.
And we have a comment from Maureen. She says, thank you, Maureen. I loved Shivani's comment about slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
The world often goes at such a fast speed, I guess she wants to say. So, okay, the world often goes so fast that we often lose the truth that's in the details because we don't take the time to allow the truth of a situation to come to us or allow the other person time to participate. Yeah, I think that's because we are so, I mean, most of us are on 24/7. It's like go, and we are distracted, and quite often I would even suggest if it's a significant other to literally sit opposite each other, gaze into each other's eyes, take a few deep breaths, especially if it's an important conversation. Connect. Yeah, I think we're having a hard time in general connecting.
That's what it is, because again, people like people that are like themselves. We understand ourselves, so we want to understand, or we think other people should understand the way that we think. You know, well, I wanted so-and-so for Christmas. He should have just known. How?
Yeah.
How should that person just know what you want if you've never said anything? You know, particularly men. Women are very different. Where, you know, when we're in a relationship and somebody mentions, they can just mention that they want something, it goes on our list. It goes on our Christmas list.
It's already in the brain.
Forget. Men, you know, it doesn't land there because the time isn't now. It's not Christmas yet. It's not whatever holiday. It's not anniversary. So they're not thinking about that yet because that time hasn't come. So, you know, men and women, they process differently. They're men by their nature. They're very left-brained. Women are very whole-brained by their nature. So they're scanning all of the information all at once and making note of it. And believe me, when he mentions things, Christmas Day, he mentioned something and it went on the list, you know, and his shopping's already done. He'll think about what to get me the day before Christmas.
Yeah. And then the assumption, if you
That's
don't
based
get
on history, not assumptions.
Yeah. And then the assumption, if you don't get the present you really want and you're going, but I've dropped so many hints, why? Yeah. He doesn't love me.
Yeah. And that's not the case. They didn't get the hint.
Exactly.
We really have to be direct with each other when we want things. And I'll just give him a piece of paper because he is an owl personality. He likes to read things. And so I give him a list of things that I either want him to do or that I want from him. And he remembers the list. He will not remember what I tell him because he's not auditory. I'm auditory. I remember things I hear. Written, not as much. So, you know, everybody's different.
Yeah, and there's where we make a lot of assumption about how people learn. You know, we think they learn the same way we do.
Yeah.
Which may be true and maybe not true.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. So the invitation is really in exploring each other. Exploration. Yeah.
Exploring, asking questions, and not being afraid, you know, to say, you know, this is really uncomfortable for me to ask, but if I don't ask, I'm not going to know. So I call this scripting. I script out when it's a really uncomfortable thing. I script it out. I write it down even, and then I say it out loud a few times. And once you do, then by the time that you say it to the person that you're going to be communicating with, it comes out easier.
Well, I totally agree with that. And it's like I have that conversation with my inner child first, because she's the one who's afraid to have the conversation. So by scripting it ahead of time, it's like that part of me gets comfortable with what I'm about to ask or say. So that's a great point.
Yeah. And be sure, everybody, that if you do this, say it out loud. You say it to your animals. You know, they won't tell anybody. I rehearse to my cats and say, what do you think of this? They agree. Give me a treat. I listen. So, okay. Any other comments?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me see on Facebook. Again, you guys can look too, because I can only see the first line of each thing.
Bear with me.
Michelle, thank you. Lorelei, Richard says, Lorelei, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Richard.
I don't know. Maybe I have to refresh. Otherwise, can't see anything new.
No, I don't see anything else. Nope.
Nope. Nope.
Okay. All right. I think that's it, and nothing else over on the side conversation here.
Nope. Everybody's
nothing in Zoom. No, everybody is mum.
Okay. All right. Well, we would love to have your comments, everybody. Please go ahead and, if you will, please post your comments. You can put them, in Facebook beneath this. Don't wait, and, you don't have to wait until we're live to do this. Go ahead and continue to post your comments, because we do go and look at them. And then also on our YouTube channel as well. And any comments that you have, and you don't necessarily have to agree with us. We would like you to, of course, but you don't have to.
We're not assume that you do. We won't make that assumption.
Right. Yeah, that's and we're curious about you too. So we are we're doing our best to, to practice what we are saying, right?
Right.
What we're teaching. Yeah.
So in closing, I do want to bring this book out because I finally found it, and we've had so many people ask about it.
Oh, love that.
This is A Little Soul in the Sun. It's my favorite Neil Donald Walsh book. It's taken out of Conversations with God, and he made a children's book out of it. And this is a little parable about soul contracts. So for those of you out there who want to do a very quick, easy, oh my gosh, I get that, read, The Little Soul in the Sun is the one that we recommend. And I think we all have it and have read it multiple times. And I'm assuming we have all given it as gifts. I have given it as gifts many, many times. Am I right, ladies? Have you?
Yeah.
I'm the exception. I know of the existence of the book. I have not read it.
Oh, okay. If you get a chance to get it, you will love it. And it's such a wonderful way to really understand soul contracts. And the book that we're talking about, we really want to invite you to read the book. It is a quick and easy read. It's short chapters. And, we're on number 3. Don't make assumptions. I never liked it makes an ass out of you and me. People say assumptions make an ass. It doesn't make an ass. It makes us human. That's all. It makes us human. We're just assuming. We haven't done anything wrong. It's just becoming conscious of it and then coming up with new skills so that we can not do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Lorelei disappeared. I don't know what happened. But
okay. She just disappeared. Who knows? I'm assuming she had to go to the bathroom. No.
I'm assuming there are some tech issues.
Yeah. So anyways, we're done for today, everybody. It's so
here she is. She's coming back.
Okay. Or she's trying.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, until next time, everyone, I just want to say I love you so much. I'm glad that you're here for this conversation. Let us know what you think about our conversations, the ideas that we've had here. Anything that you want to add, Shivani?
Yeah, let us know what you've been assuming. Where, maybe you look back at your life and you notice where have you made assumptions and where did it backfire on you? Because even having, awareness of past events will help you move forward.
Absolutely.
And do it better, right? And slow down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so great to see you, everyone. Well, feel your energy. Much love to you. Until next time, namaste.
And namaste.
Namaste.